My guest today is Kanan Linder. Kanan is the CEO of Stardust, an end-to-end gaming platform for game developers to launch Web3 games. Very interesting. Welcome to the show, Kanan.
Thank you, Andy, and pleasure being here.
Pleasure to have you here, my man. We'll do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be super cool if you could please introduce yourself. Love to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. I suppose, what have you been doing in the lead up to, becoming CEO at Stardust?
Totally, and it's been quite a journey through the Web3 space. So my name's Kanan. I grew up actually in the Bay Area in Palo Alto, California. Ended up actually as a software engineer at Bloomberg in New York City. Really enjoyed it, but fell into this world we know as blockchain in about 2018. Came across my first CryptoKitty and said, these are awesome. We need these in games. Went to look for infrastructure. I was a little bit of an indie developer on the side to try and see how to integrate these NFTs into my Unity game I was building. There was nothing. And so for the last 6 years, it's been a long time and it's been a while. Stardust has been on a mission to make game developers successful, very much through bringing their games and allowing them to bring millions of players to their game. We offer two products: custodial wallets, allowing game developers to onboard players easily, all the way through to user acquisition, helping them acquire those millions of players to their game, and all surrounding making them successful in Web3. Super excited to be here. Super excited that we support the largest games in Web3 like Shrapnel, Midnight Society. And it's been quite a journey over the last 6 years. It feels about like 100 in crypto, but glad we're still here today.
Yeah, fantastic. So, maybe just to begin with, we'll dive into, I see you've got a very interesting recent announcement. There's a few things we can talk about. Just before we do that, I think it'd be really useful, Kanan. Look, I'd be fascinated. I'm sure the listeners will as well. Just give us your perspective on kind of how you and I suppose the team at Stardust think about the state of Web3 gaming at the moment. Maybe, what are some of the challenges? Where are we at as an industry? Just the kind of state of play, if you like.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. And I feel like every year we say next year it's going to be the year for Web3 gaming. And I think everybody understands and sees that the dichotomy of Web2 to Web3 gaming that we've seen in the past is much more blurred than a fixed line. Web3 games have to be fun. They have to be great games. The fact they're Web3 is a bug, not a feature. And until we get to that point, unfortunately, the community can't understand why Web3 games are better, because that's coming through a better game, not just that they are Web3. And so it's something that we have seen more recently, and in the next couple of years, we'll see more games released. What I do think is much more exciting, though, if you look at the trajectory of Web3 gaming versus Web2 gaming. In the early days of Web2, especially on mobile, we had these incentivized traffic platforms. These were 2009, go to download this app, get $1, go get to this place in game, get $5, tap, joy, misplay. A couple of these platforms are still around today, but that's what catalyzed this growth in mobile gaming. Now, likening it to the Web3 space, we've seen this emergence of play to earn. We've seen the emergence of questing platforms that are very reminiscent of these ad traffic platforms in Web2. And so I think as a trajectory, Web3 gaming is set up for success, but we're still a ways to get there, and we're still working out the kinks. And at the end of the day, great games rise to the top. Doesn't matter what web they're on.
Yeah, that is an excellent way of putting it. Very easy to say, hard, of course, in the real world to pull off. But yeah, I mean, that is the trajectory that we're on. I like the way that you guys talk about how, the Stardust platform is aimed to give game developers easy access to, secure, scalable infrastructure for invisible player wallets. I liked that term. I'm not sure I've seen it before. But yeah, just give us a kind of an idea as to what you guys mean by that and why that's relevant.
100%. So games operate, we're so quantitative in the gaming space, right? LTV, CAC, all these things. Time to fun is probably the most important, and really what Fortnite perfected, right? I can load up the game, I can play game, and in 5 seconds, I'm playing a fully fledged game. I may not know what I'm doing, but I'm playing a game and having a good time. And so in the gaming space, time to fun is the most valuable entry point into getting people in and playing your game so that they don't drop off. Invisible wallets are the first step toward that. So in a Web3 gaming ecosystem, you can't tell people to go download MetaMask, to jump through hoops, to save their passkey, to, write down 24 words. That just doesn't work. And so we have to provide an onboarding experience that is equal to or better than any game that has come before. And that's what invisible wallets allow game developers to do, right? Is the game, before it took 10 seconds to download and play, now it takes 10 seconds or less. And that's what invisible wallets do for game developers, and why we're excited to support them in this next phase of growth. It doesn't add time to the time to fund, but only equals or subtracts from it.
Yeah, again, makes perfect sense. And again, I love the kind of the gaming lingo. Time to fun. Again, it makes perfect sense. I mentioned that you guys had an announcement recently, so let's just talk about that. So as I understand it, you guys announced the launch of Starbase, which is it's a consumer-facing rewards and social gaming platform. So I imagine that you're partnering with a whole lot of different games that can kind of make use of this infrastructure. But look, I'm sure you can explain it much better than I can, Keenan. So yeah, just talk us through Stardust and Starbase.
It was a great way of putting it, actually. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And it's actually one of our first forays at Stardust into a consumer-facing product, which is, shall I say, something that is a unique experience in and of itself, having, been a back-end infrastructure development company and kind of supporting these large games into a consumer-facing application with a whole different set of challenges, obviously, for your individual gamer. You hit the nail on the head here, which is we're trying and succeeding, actually, in our first couple of weeks of the platform being live, in driving users into great games in Web3. And typically for many of these platforms, they're very social focused, like this on Twitter, comment, retweet, join our Discord in our community, maybe post something about us. But this platform, Starbase, is very focused on actually playing games. And that's our goal here is, we think Web3 as a whole maybe focuses a tad bit too much on maybe social interaction and not enough on deep core gameplay. And that's what this platform allows gamers to do, and even more, get rewarded for it. Something that is not yet released and maybe dropping a little bit of in the Web3 space, what we call alpha here, is this is our lead up towards something much bigger called Starnet, which is actually a decentralized ad network that we're building, really trying to create the next Google, Facebook, AppLove, and Scale size ad network owned by the game developers and apps that are making it so valuable.
Yeah, fascinating. So I was just looking at Starbase myself. Yeah, it's quite interesting. You've got a whole lot of different missions that people can take part in, and they can earn gems, right, by taking part and completing the different missions.
Exactly, 100%. And we went for a more experiential design. A lot of these platforms are like, you do this mission or this quest or, this task. And we really wanted to gamify it a little, right? The whole experience should be gamified. And, we run game nights in our Discord. We're very active on socials. And it's a great opportunity because, the raising of the tide lifts all boats, as they say. And this is a platform for a lot of our partners, both existing and new, to come together to, instead of having 1,000 players per game, right, bring the 50, 100,000 on this platform to every game that's a part of it.
Give us a sense of the scale of what you guys are doing at Stardust. Like, I don't know, any user metrics or number of game titles, or however you guys kind of like to think about it would be useful, I think, Keenan.
Yeah, so out of the 10 to 12, I think you see differing reports, million wallets that you see in Web3 gaming. We support about 4 to 4.5 million of them. So we are by far and large the largest backend provider of wallets for game developers out there on the market today. And this just comes through going back to the invisible wallet concept, the ability for game developers with Stardust to onboard hundreds of thousands and millions of players instead of the 10,000 that you can, with more hoops to jump through, such as other systems that exist today. And so that's really one of our core focused KPIs, is number of wallets on system, because it's directly correlated with the size of games that we're supporting. Through Starbase, we're in our early weeks, but we have probably somewhere a little over around 15K weekly active users doing missions today, and hopefully growing that to about 100,000 by the end of the month is definitely our goal and one of our main KPIs. And then in terms of games we're supporting on Starbase, we'll be launching quite a few in the upcoming weeks. It's gotten more, I think, industry reaction and reception than we'd even anticipated. And we're, don't want to turn down games that come to us, but so many we're honestly pretty close to.
Yeah, and one of those games, I guess it's a more recent one that has already been announced, but it looks pretty cool. It's called Shrapnel. It's like everyone loves a first-person shooter, described as a AAA game. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the Shrapnel team's incredible. I'm really, really, really excited to be working with them. And for the listeners out there today, they release different snapshots called STX versions of their platform. The next one, I believe, coming on August 28th and running through end of September. So gear up for that, because that's going to be a great one with some awesome prizes as well. They're an incredible team, ex-AAA developers, headquartered in Seattle. It's really, really exciting. And I think, going back to one of your earlier questions, if any game is going to break out in Web3, it's going to be because it's equal to or better than a Web2 equivalent. And something like a Shrapnel is it's on the level of the shooters we see today. In these games take hundreds of millions of dollars to create. And so really excited, because this is going to be a great game. People are going to play. They're not even going to know it's Web3, but they're going to have more fun because of it. And that's going to spur kind of this level of innovation and this growth in Web3 games that we have not seen today.
Yeah, and look, we'll obviously do all the links and so on, but just to make it easy for people as we're kind of going through it, in case people are interested in something like Shrapnel, just maybe shout out how people can go and take a look at it.
Totally. Shrapnel.com is, of course, the easiest, but I really focus on Twitter. In the Web3 space, for many of these native games, Twitter is like the social content hub. It's where all the UGC comes through. And you can also take a look at their kind of on, I guess it's Twitter or X now, feed, and also look in for streamers that are streaming the game. Every STX they do, huge streamers are streaming, a lot of UGC. There's a lot of, unique drops in alpha on Twitter or X. So I'd go follow them there. Huge shout out to them. They're doing a great job.
Awesome. So, one of the, you kind of alluded to it, but and one of the problems with, or what I should rephrase that more as a challenge, I guess, is, this idea of user acquisition. And the other flip side of that, I guess you'd describe as, user retainment in Web3. It's hard enough getting, new Web3 gamers to come on board and onto your platform, onto your game, whatever it is. And then, the second challenge is obviously to retain them. How do you think about, what are the kind of strategies to achieve those and solve those problems?
Yeah, and it's not even an easy problem in Web 2 these days to solve,
That's right?
With IDFM, and everybody is trying to tackle the challenge. And one of the things that's fascinating about our user acquisition product and what we're going into is it's as much as a solution to some of the Web 2 problems that exist, or challenges, to your point, is in Web 3 as well. And so we're really trying, and we see user acquisition actually as, even before games, the first rubber band that can kind of take these two industries that have been separated and meld them together, because there are a lot of Web 2 benefits to UA that can be learned from Web 3. There are a lot of Web 3 benefits to UA that, of course, can be learned by Web 2. And so it's actually a very cohesive and positive relationship to meld both technologies as it comes toward user acquisition. Fast forward to Starnet in a couple of weeks, a little bit more information on that. But to your point, retention and attainment in Web3 has proven a challenge, because typically, if you look at a game like Pixels or Axie Infinity, both of which actually on Ronin in the same network, interestingly enough, were kind of spurred by economic speculation. And that is very, very, frankly, short-lived. It's great while everything's going up, but it doesn't last. And so, games like Shrapnel are great. Games like Habbo Hotel, I actually really want to call out, because Habbo Hotel is a game that's been around for the better part of 20 years, super iconic game that we work with, and has added Web3 as an extra meta game to their game that's been around for a while. And so this is how we like to pitch Web3 to both existing games in Web3, but also Web2 games, is the core gameplay is in itself just a game. And then there's an extra economic layer of Web3 that seeks to retain users over longer periods of time. And Habbo has shown that through individuals who play the game and are actually invested in the game through owning either an NFT in-game or other sort of item, actually spend more time in-game, actually spend more in-game, actually do better in-game. And so it's something we're really pushing on Web3 games to think about is how to leverage this ownership concept to get people more heavily invested, because they'll actually reciprocate through playing longer and spending more money.
Yeah, and look, of course, that ownership side of Web3 that you're talking about, Kanan, is, obviously crucial to, the ethos of Web3, the idea that players can own their assets, whatever they are, and of course, sell them, trade them, engage in kind of economic activity, and then there's play to earn and that whole side of things. But you're exactly right, Kanan. There has to be that balance between certainly the ability to own, trade, and earn. But at the same time, if things get too frothy, when those kind of speculative manias happen, that can end up burning people, as I guess we saw in NFTs, best example.
100%. And it's frankly, it's not something that's yet figured out, and that's fine. You don't have to figure it out all day one, right? How many years were mobile games paid in the App Store until someone switched on freemium and said, holy shit, right? And I think in Web3 games, it's very similar. And even Web2 games that are adopting Web3, it's all about LTV curves at the end of the day, no matter what game you are, no matter what industry you're in. And can Web3 either smooth out an LTV curve that's very top concentrated today, or can Web3 extend the life cycle of a high value paying user to be even more invested and spend more, right? We really dive deep into those problems. We've seen a little of it, but still a lot to be worked through and figured out.
But I think that you've nailed it there. That's just simply the trajectory. It might not happen overnight. It'll be a kind of multi-year, even longer transition. But simply put, whether we even call it Web3 in the future, who knows? But just the advantages of, as you kind of talked about, people being able to hold their assets and just engage with games and at a much deeper level. In the long term, that seems like just a logical endpoint for the gamer experience from a developer and a user perspective.
100%. I mean, I think Bill Gates' great quote, and it's so true in business, right? You overestimate what you do in 2 years, but you underestimate what you do in 10, right? And so coming off that, I think Web3 gaming will fit that trend very much.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite quotes, but we'll return to that later on, Kanan. So, with that in mind, then, would you characterize, I guess, like Stardust itself or Starbase, what you guys do, and the game development houses that utilize your products, would it be fair to characterize that you guys are kind of actively targeting Web2 users with the intention of bringing them over to perceived Web3 games?
100%. Trojan horsing users is what we like to call it, right? And working with a couple large studios, Tilting Point, one of the larger publishers in Web2, hundreds of games and tens of millions of MAU, Stillfront as well. And really, it's a slower process as Web2 developers experiment a little bit more, right, iteratively in Web3 than a Web3 developer that's all in from day one. But we've seen very early indications of success. And as that grows, it's really all about every user is going to be a Web3 user. As you would say today, every user is on the internet, right? It sounds silly to say today, but trust me, 20 years ago, well, maybe 20, 30 years ago now, time flies, but it would have been, insanity to say that, right? And, you still see the newspaper headlines of like, the internet is a passing fad. Right. And when people say that about Web3 or Web3 games, nothing makes me more bullish on the industry, because I said, that's what everybody said 30 years ago. You're saying it again today. We must be going to the moon. So, I'm really, really bullish on what we'll accomplish in future. Every user, every bank, every game, every system we use will be Web3 and some foundation as a fabric of this new internet we're building. But it'll take time, and we'll get there. Trojan horsing and showing people, right, a better way to game is the only way to get there.
Yeah, and maybe it's a little bit of a side point, Kanan, but the way, while you're kind of describing that, I guess another trend, it's a little bit of a cliche to say gamification, but, as these trends become a little bit more sleeker, more mature, more sophisticated, it feels like that kind of, a combination of, Web3, AI, gamification, just in the kind of digital experiences that we'll rely on in the future. That's where it's heading, isn't it?
Duolingo is a perfect example of, look at those numbers once they added in that little owl on the side and the gamification. Throw back to, the Microsoft Word paperclip in the bottom right? Like, that style is incredible. There's I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but kind of an NFT project where you get a free plot of land in a tree, and every time you go into like focus time, the tree grows a little bit. And it's just like this concept of, people love to have fun, right? And whether it's, no matter what you do, whether it's reading a book, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's walking outside, whether it's learning a new language, right? Whether it's playing a game, like this concept of fun is transcendent, right? And almost tricking your brain into doing something that is maybe not the most pleasant, but giving you pleasant experience doing it. And I think, the gamification of everything is coming almost to a fault. Robinhood got fined by the SEC for every time you bought a stock, it, pushed off glitter and everything like that. And, there are some dark patterns that come with it, but overall gamification is the future, and everything will be a game.
And I think that's why, OpenAI, with the kind of the sultry voice mode in ChatGPT, when they release that in the proper version, again, it just makes it fun, and there's just something about that is going to, trick the human brain into emotionally interacting with the AI. And it's just another intriguing data point that points towards the future, I think.
100%. We're just input-output machines, right? And we get to change, right, what comes in and what comes out. And so, the better we can do for ourselves and the more enjoyment we get out of it, I'm bullish.
Let's just finish up on Stardust, and the whole the kind of ecosystem that you're building. Starnet, we talked about Starnet just really briefly. Just again, explain how Starnet works and kind of what's coming down the line there, Kanan.
Sure, yeah. So I can't be too public about everything yet, but at a high level, as we got more into the user acquisition space and are running a bidder and a DSP and all of this, we started realizing that every game developer is contributing toward Facebook and Google and AppLovin's bottom line, sending them tons of data and money, and AppLovin gives a couple of users back, and hopefully the game developer makes money, but AppLovin always wins. The traditional ad networks of today, like playing the casino, you're pulling the slot machine, but no matter how many times you pull it, they win every time because the ad network grows and grows and grows and has all this data. And that value that the game developer is giving to the network goes to the network's bottom line. Very rarely does the majority of it, if ever, go to the game developer. And so what Starnet is it's effectively an ad network that instead of being owned by a Facebook or Google or AppLovin that just had one of its most profitable quarters ever, is instead owned by these game developers and these app developers, making it so valuable. And thinking about the difference in how a game thinks about return on ad spend or profitability, when instead of, okay, I'm sending $1 in and hoping a user that I get out spends $1.10, they actually get some underlying ownership of that $100 billion ad network they're helping create. That is something that'll turn the industry on its head, and something we're trying to change, because game developers right now, especially post IDFA apocalypse and all these privacy changes on Apple and Google's platforms, are getting, are not having a good time, and we're hoping to return some of the value they're bringing the industry back to them through Stone.
Yep. Makes sense. And you guys are essentially platform or blockchain agnostic. Is that the right way to characterize it?
Correct. Yeah. Everything we do is, transitory across every chain that exists. A lot of people like to ask, do you have a favorite chain? Do you do this? Do you do that? And at the end of the day, the best way that I think of chains is like operating systems, right? Depending what program you're running, sometimes you're going to want a Mac OS. Sometimes you would want a Linux server. Sometimes you may even want a Windows server. And it really, we like to ask games to think about their KPIs and core metrics and what they're looking for. And then how the chain that they choose or are looking at can best suit them in that mission that they have. And it's not always the same. And, there are many great chains out there, and we're happy to support games wherever they want to go.
Of course, that makes sense. All right. As we finish up this part of the podcast then, Kanan, just, shout out the various websites or internet properties. People that want to come and look at what you guys are building, Stardust, Starbase, and so on.
Love it. All of the above. So you can find us at stardust.gg. You can find us on Twitter or X, your preferred platform, Starnet. At Stardust. You can also follow us at Starnet, which is kind of the feature in what we're building. And you can find Starbase at base.starnet.io. If you want to reach out to me with any questions, I love helping other entrepreneurs. I'm CLINDER, Linder at stardust.gg. And of course, go follow great games like Shrapnel, right, on Twitter as well. Great to keep up with, and they're one of the games at the forefront of the Web3 space, and as they grow, so do we all, and it's a great way to track the end.
Awesome. Well, time to finish up the podcast then, Kanan, and we do that by running you through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
I love it. Only hot takes here, yes.
Awesome. I'm just going to run some questions at you, Kanan. Just give me your honest hot take style answers. Say whatever you like. Question one for you, bit of a funny one, but where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with maximalism at all. I think, you have to be able to just sell it, underlying your beliefs and what you think will win. But at the same time, I do personally believe that the multi-chain approach will win. So I would say I'm a maximalist on the multi-chain approach.
Awesome. All right. What would you say then is your firmest conviction, a crypto opinion?
As a hot take or just normie day?
Well, just whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, crypto is unfortunately the greatest money printing machine that man has ever created. We have taken what has only yet been so far done by governments and private companies and in a liquid sense, and we have created an industry in which any project can create something extremely liquid and have a printed source of supply and money. And I think, unfortunately, that does not correlate with the value we see crypto bringing the general ecosystem, and has led to more speculation than actual technological growth and adoption of crypto that we desperately need in different industries. And I think that, the short-term implications are fun. We get to trade meme coins, but the long-term implications are very jarring, as we do see this as the technology of the future, but one that is hampering its own adoption through the economic games that people love to play on the technology.
Yep. That's spicy, but hard to argue with that, Kanan. Here's a quote that you may have heard before. Look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. 10 years is a long time in blockchain, but anything you like, look ahead, Web3, gaming, Starbase, Stardust. What does it all look like in 10 years' time?
In 10 years, it's not Web3. It's just the industry, right? I think in 10 years there's going to be no concept of Web3 and Web2. It's just going to be the internet, right? And move around Starnet, Starbase, Stardust is going to be as easy as swapping from Google to YouTube to Gmail. And that is kind of the vision we're going for. And I think the underlying funny part about trends that I've actually started to understand more as I've lived through a little bit more of these technological changes is it comes with the newer generation. As soon as a younger generation is trained on a technology, in 10 years, that technology becomes dominant, whether anybody likes it or not, right? Look at TikTok, look at the old games, look at the internet itself, right? The difference between our grandparents' generation, our parents' generation, and our generation, right? Even in typing speed and then something similar to that. And so, the next 10 years is going to see the generation that's trained on blockchain to understand this stuff grow up, start creating businesses, start entering the workforce, and that is going to spur 100x technology change here, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it.
Yeah, well said. All right. William Gibson famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, Kanan, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
It's crazy to me how advanced AI has gotten. For 5 years ago, people didn't understand what was coming in 5 years. Can you imagine looking at what AI is today and trying to understand what is going to come in 5 years? That is probably one of the most terrifying aspects I can think of, and hard to even qualify how it's going to change everything. And so I think that's the future that's here today. What that means for the future, I have no idea. But look, 50 years ago, right, they were like, what the hell's a calculator, right? And that was a 10x change, right? What the calculator did for math, right, AI is going to do for everybody. And it's going to completely change what we do, how we live, how we work, and hopefully kind of spur the future.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's just at the back of my mind, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people around the world. It's just gives you even more angst almost over the future, because you can't help but wondering, for people that have kids in school, there's no such thing as a kind of traditional career path anymore. It's not even clear that it makes sense to go and, study a profession, because we just don't know what is going to come out of the next decade if the kind of the bullish AI predictions are right. And even if things are delayed, maybe it just takes 20 years, but the world is going to change, and there's no way to prepare for what is on the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean, you totally agree with that. I mean, 50 years ago, mechanic was the highest skilled job, right? We may get back to that reality, because the only thing that AI may not be able to do, although Boston Dynamics and robotics may have differing opinions on this, right? They'd be able to fix cars, right, and do things like that. And so it's fascinating, because the trend of what a non-replaceable worker is may change, because AI is coming, and I don't know any engineer that can code better than what I've seen some of these programs do.
Indeed. And look, it brings us nicely to our final question, Kanan, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Ooh, recent, non-recent, what, any of the above?
Field is wide open.
Look, okay, I'll take it from two angles. Growing up, and still today, I'm a Harry Potter fan. I love Harry Potter. I'm a nerd. I know everything about it. A little too much, to be honest with you. But really, really, really excited on that. Star Trek is also great. Super, super bullish on Star Trek. Such a Trekkie. Yeah, I'd have to say probably many of the Star Trek films. I would say I'm really like Star Wars as well. The old classics that growing up in the early 2000s, running to the bookstore and reading the newest book or watching the newest movie was all I'm about. So watching Game of Thrones right now, the newest House of the Dragon season. So love that. But anything sci-fi, I love.
Yep, some great selections there. And I guess, yeah, I'm a little bit older, so I kind of, I sort of watched the Harry Potter thing from a, slightly more distant perspective. But I did, read some of the books. Yeah, they certainly were huge and interesting to see, I guess, J.K. Rowling's journey as well, and see her become a kind of a voice on Twitter, on X.
I just read the books. That's what I'll say. I just read the books and then listen to them. What's your favorite, Andy?
Look, I mean, so many, but if someone does ask me the question or put it back on me, which sometimes they do like to do, I guess my default answer is the first Matrix film. Because I think that's just, I mean, it's obviously a brilliant film, quite old now, but it says a lot about kind of, there's a lot of philosophy in it. There's this almost kind of simulation theory in it. The Matrix itself has become quite a powerful meme. So yeah, well, I'll go with the original Matrix.
And we are in the hot take round, so you have to tell us, what's your take on the last Matrix film?
Yeah, not as good. Not as good. The first one is an incredible film. And saying that, I haven't actually seen the most recent one, if that's the one you mean. But none of the following films live quite up to the standard of the first one, is what I would say.
Yeah, I don't think you're missing much with the most recent one. It's always nice to see it come back in some form or fashion. I mean, Lord of the Rings versus the Hobbit movies, right? But it's great to keep it alive, I will say, especially because the Harry Potter generation is a specific generation, and the next generations don't get that same love for all of it that we did, right? I mean, growing up with a Pokemon, Game Boy, all that good stuff. So it's great to see it kind of come back for a newer generation, even if in lesser form, but still stay relevant.
Couldn't have said it better. Kanan, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed hanging out with you today. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us. Just to close it out again, tell people what you guys are doing with Starbase, Starnet, all those different properties. Why should game developers, game studios come and look at what you guys are doing and come and utilize your services?
100%. Look, our mission is to make game developers successful. It's what we do in Web3 and Web2, wallets, user acquisition. If we can't make you successful, right, we're not the right partners. And everybody we work with, it's because we believe and they believe that they will be more successful because of the partnership and working together. And so, you can find us online. You can find us on Twitter at stardust.gg or Stardust on Twitter. Please reach out. We'd love to hear from you, even if it's just a point in the right direction. But making you successful is our goal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kanan. All the best, and bye for now.
Thanks, Andy.